Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unlocked, where we talk about unlocking the potential of you, the people you work with, and the people you do life with. At the time of this recording, I'm offering all of you, yes, my lovely listeners, a free 15-minute communication coaching call. You come with some kind of communication problem, and I give you a solution. My calendar link is in the show notes, so check that out. So, what can you learn by saving lives, racing cars, technology, math? What can you learn about all these things with leadership and how it drives success at teams? Well, the idea of impossible results. How do we achieve impossible results? That is what my guest today is going to talk about. Bill Lennan runs a company called 40% Better. And we talk about what the name of that company, where it came from, and why it's 40%. You're going to hear the story about that. Bill is a really smart dude, and it was really cool talking to him. There's a lot of background stuff y'all didn't hear about, but he is super fascinating. And he's one of those people that, just goes in head first on learning everything about everything. And he does it through tiny little steps, which he'll talk about in here and why that's important and how that backs up the whole way he trains teams. He lives in Silicon Valley. He's worked with companies big and small on performance, team performance, and optimizing team performance through systemized processes. And if you're not a systems person, that's okay. Bill didn't think he was either until he's had this epiphany that we'll also talk about later in the show. So without further ado, here we come. Mr. Bill, what's that? Oh my gosh, I just realized what I just said. I just realized what I just said. Oh no. So I do get that. Have you gotten that before?
Yeah, once or twice, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I just gave it to you again. If nobody knows what we're talking about, just look up Mr. Bill on YouTube and you'll see what we're talking about. Anyway, Bill, so cool having you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you. We're going to talk about some fascinating stuff because just the intro has gotten me intrigued. And now you're like, I just want to drill. I just want to drill.
Let's go to town. Yeah, let's have fun with
it. Let's talk first of all about why we should listen to you in the first place. So where'd you come from? Sure. And why are you here?
So I've been running software teams in Silicon Valley for 20 years. I mean, I've been based in Silicon Valley. My teams have been all over the planet. So I've done both local on premises, sitting next to my team and people distributed everywhere. And consistently, repeatedly, they did things people said were impossible. And I've done this at small startups and I've done it for Google. And, kind of all across the board. And I, for a long time, didn't know how to explain what I was doing. For 15 years, we kept delivering and people kept asking me how we did it. And I kept saying, I'm just taking care of my people. Like, I don't know how to explain it. And then a few years ago, my now partner, helped me figure out and reverse engineer everything that I was doing and be able to recognize that the way that I was approaching leadership was very different from my peers, which was why we also had very different results. I had a very different set of mental models, and everything is mental models. About how we approach the world. I had a very different set of skills to support those mental models. And then I was implementing daily, weekly, monthly habits, all of which help my team's psychological safety at the end of and their engagement and how they saw the work they were doing. And so they just performed amazingly better.
Impossible results. We would like to achieve those sometimes.
Sure.
Like those sound pretty sweet. I'm good with that. Yeah. I'm curious though about, let's take a step. I'm curious about your 40% better mentality. I mean, your website, your company, it's called 40% better. And I'm going 40% better. That's pretty good too, I think. Why not 50 though? I want to be 50% better, Bill. Okay. Or like what's the 40? Where'd that come from?
So one of the companies that I was at, the day that I started, the CTO onboarding, computer, all that stuff. And he said, and at the end, the last thing he said was, by the way, I hate to tell you this, but I'm giving you the worst performing team in the company. Good luck. And I said, wow, okay. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it. That's in the back of my head. I was thinking, this is going to be a fun challenge. Went off to do my thing. 6 months later, I walk into the office and he comes over and goes, hey, Bill, can I talk to you? And I go, sure. What's going on? And he says, come into my office. And walk in and he closes the door and he goes, what have you done to your team? And I said, I don't know. What are you talking about? And he goes, we gave you the worst performing team in the company. You now have the best performing team in the company. You've brought them up by 40% in their coding throughput in 6 months. They've been together almost 10 years, and we've been trying everything to make them get better, and we've never done it. What are you doing? And I said, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I take good care of my teams. And he said, well, when you figure out what that is, you have to teach me because we don't know how to do this. And I said, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And that's where the name of the company came from. That team, we then went on to do a project that everybody thought was a 12 to 15 month project. It was kind of a Hail Mary for the company. We delivered it in 8 months.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably one of those like impossible things like that generally people will think, oh man, no way. Like that's not possible. We don't have enough time, money, or people, Bill. We don't have enough time, money, or people is what people say.
Yeah.
But I think that's the mental block, which kind of leads me into your next thing here is talking about the mental blocks and the mental models type of approach. So you talked mental models, then you talk skills, and then you talk weekly habits. Let's go through each one of those, if you don't mind. I want to talk about because that's kind of your process, your system.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. And hit on the mental models thing for me.
So one of the things that we realized, my partner and I my partner was helping me reverse engineer what I was doing. Right. We started talking about how I think about leadership. And so I have this stack of mental models, right? And beliefs. This is how I see the world. Right. The first one is that leadership is a different set of skills than being an individual contributor. I could be great at writing code and horrible at getting a team motivated to do good work. The flip side is I could be mediocre or even bad at writing code, but really good at getting people to work. Right. So for me, it's all about learning a new skill set to help my team operate better. The second mental model is my core function as a team lead is to level everybody up on the team, is to help them operate better, kind of like being a sports coach, right? If you go from being a player to being a coach, it's a different set of things about how you're communicating with people and how you're helping them improve. You're not the one on the court anymore, right? Or on the field. The third mental model is that you should expect to be emotionally uncomfortable in service of your team because there's things that you're going to need to learn yourself and help them with. They're going to be scary because you've never done it before. And so you're going to have to know how to manage your emotions, how to manage your emotional discomfort, how to baby step your way into mastery of new skills that you've never done before. And so you're going to have to know how to manage your brain chemistry, how to manage your emotions. And that's a very, very well researched skill stack. So that you can do things that are going to make your team, allow your team to become more successful, right? Those are the first kind of fundamental mental models to use, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Do you have? So you walk people through these different mental models. Do you do assessments? Do you do how do you dig into this idea of what do people need to work on and how do we tap into what's really needed within an organization?
So there's one of the things that I discovered is that oftentimes people that I've worked with over the years, they have a mental model, a skill, some mental models, some skills, but like me, they don't know how to talk about it. And they don't know how important it is, right? They don't understand the value of that mental model. And because they can't talk about it and they don't realize the value of it, they never share with anybody else. And if we're being smart leaders, then we're trying to build other leaders. We're training other people on our teams to also be leaders, because that way the team can operate effectively when we're not in the room, whether it's real or virtual, right? So we really want to be able to name exactly what's going on. It's like math, right? What's 7 times 3?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Okay. 63?
No, 7 times 3.
7 times 3. Oh, 21.
Yeah. So the reason that you know the answer to that question is math is a
Yep.
system, right?
Yeah.
And anybody that I ask who's more than 12, probably more than 8, knows the answer to that question, because we've systematized math. Now, you didn't start off learning how to multiply. You started off learning how to count. It was 1, 2, 3, right? And then you got into math and you got addition, subtraction, multiplication, algebra, geometry, whatever. It's because it's a system, right? With leadership, if we break it down to make it a system and we name everything and we explain what everything is, then we can communicate really easily, just like we can if you're struggling with math, right? When my kids had math challenges when they were in school, we sent them to a tutor. Everybody had a shared language, right? It made it really easy. And the way that we approach leadership is the exact same way. You have this stack of mental models. You have the skills to support the mental models, because if you have the mental model that you will need to be emotionally uncomfortable in service of your team, but you don't know how to actually operationalize that, it doesn't do you any good. It's like knowing that math exists, but you can't count, right? And so we're very deliberate about the system. Everybody gets to learn everything. You start with, it's like the same way that we learn math, right? And so everybody learns the system. Everybody gets homework to practice the parts of the system as they're moving through it. And then we basically do tutoring and coaching at the end, because people will struggle with different parts depending on where they come in. They've already got a really strong background.
So mental models, you have the different ones.
Yep.
The skills needed to exercise the models,
Right.
right? And then you move into the weekly habits. And are those things that you set up for them in order to practice the skill sets for the mental models? Is that
so? The weekly habits are the things that the team leads do with their teams, and none of them are particularly challenging. Like, I come from the software world. We do agile software development. Every morning there's a meeting. Everybody's talking about where everybody take turns talking about what they did yesterday, what they were planning on doing yesterday, what they accomplished yesterday, what they're planning on doing today. That's it. And any friction that they might need help with, right? Whatever it happens to be. We do that every day. That way, everybody always knows what everybody else is doing. And if people want to do paired work, great. We figure out how to make that happen, and away we go. This means everybody knows what's happening, right? We have a very flat knowledge structure about what all is going on. And then every week I do a one-on-one with everybody on the team to hear what's happening for them. Like, it's really, I'm not telling them anything. I'm just asking questions, right? And trying to understand where there's friction for them, or where there's something that they want to get to that I can facilitate. And it's wide open. Like, if you need us to change a meeting time because you're having a struggle getting home after you drop your kid at school, okay, great. We'll move the meeting. I don't care. You want to learn a new skill set because you're curious about changing your course? Great. No problem. Let's make that happen. You want to be a team lead? Great. Let's teach you the skills so that you can have my job someday.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So let's pick a scenario.
Yeah.
Let's talk about employee engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, let's discuss why they may be engaged, and then using this idea, this system, how do we tackle an issue like that?
Yeah, of course. So engagement is a result, right? you can't you can't command engagement with people, right? They're going to be engaged because they're happy about the mission of the company. They're happy about the kind of work that they're doing. They're getting rewarded. They're getting recognized. They're getting to contribute. They have ownership, right? And so the way to build that kind of a culture is, as team leads, we have to facilitate all of those things being available, um, and possible and rewarded for our people, right? So, like, I never try to be the smartest guy in the room. Even if I am the smartest guy in the room, I don't want that to be obvious. Like, I want the team to be owning the solutions that we're talking about building. Like, I'll bring in business contributions. Oh, here's the problem the customer wants to solve. But they're doing the design work, right? They're doing everything. And so I want them to own everything, right? I don't want to, I'm happy to own the process, but I want them to own everything that's being built. And when people have ownership, they have pride of ownership, right? They want to put really good effort into building. And so if they're getting ownership, if they're getting recognition, if they're getting career advancement because I'm helping them make that happen and I'm demystifying it for them, then they're really happy to be engaged and they like being at work and they're amazingly productive.
And what part of the mental model framework are you incorporating at that point? What is helping me through this? What is helping me as a leader teach my people to be more engaged?
Yeah. So, obviously the second one, which is, your job is to make your people operate better. One of the, as kind of going down the stack, one of the mental models is about helping people with their career advancement, however they want that to go. One of the mental models is that removing friction for your people is really important. One of the mental models is that you're starting as a team lead from a position of no trust. They don't trust you when you're starting off as a team lead, no matter how long you've been there, right? Unless you've been very diligent about building trust with them, they don't trust you. And they don't trust you because, number one, most team leads, sorry to say this, don't do the behaviors that really support their people because they don't know how, right? I've been in situations at companies where my people have come to me and they've said, hey, we all need new laptops. We all need new computers. Our computers are too slow. It's impacting our work. And I've been like, okay, well, let me go make that happen. And I've been able to figure out how to get the CTO, folks that run the money, to say yes to buying computers. Other team leads haven't even gone to ask because they've been afraid they'll be told no. And because they haven't had the skills to go and approach that conversation, back to rule number 3, which is emotional discomfort, they didn't even walk in the room, right? And because they didn't have the mental model about removing friction, they didn't understand that their fundamental reason for being was to help the people operate better. They're not learning the skills of having the conversation with the CTO so that they go, oh my God, of course you need new computers. I totally get the why of that. Let's make that happen for you tomorrow morning. Right. And so if you only knew how to count, you couldn't do multiplication. You have to have these other mental models of math and then the skills to actually do the multiplication, right, in your head.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk impossible results.
Yeah.
Well, give me a case study. Give me some kind of story. I want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about your personal experience with and how you named your company. So I think I love that. I love that personal connection that you have to the name of your company and what that is. Let's talk other maybe clients or case studies.
Yeah. So I spent some time at Google, and there was a few things about that were unusual. People talk about the hiring process at Google being long and arduous and all this stuff. My interview process was one interview. It lasted 20 minutes. I asked all the questions, and that was it. The reason that it worked out that way was the hiring manager. I typically approach interviews from the perspective of I want to understand what I'm getting into, and I want to ask as many questions as possible, because if I realize this isn't the job for me, I'm going to bow out. I'm going to say, wow, thanks for the opportunity, but this is not what I want to be doing. And I'm out of here. Right. And so I typically, I start off the conversation with, hey, I've got a bunch of questions. No offense, but your job description is super generic, and I'd like to really understand more details. I started asking this guy questions, most of which he said, I have no idea, and I've never thought about that before. And he finally stopped me and said, look, you're asking better questions than I've ever considered. You know how to solve this problem, and I don't even know how to look at it. When can you start? And I said, I need a couple of weeks, right, to get off my other project. When I went into Google, the problem that they wanted me to solve, people kept telling me was both technically and legally impossible. And I interviewed over 100 people who kept saying that. They're like, oh, you can't do that. That's not technically possible, and it's not legal. I knew that they were wrong, and I didn't say that out loud because I had done a bunch of research, and I had found other companies that were doing this stuff. But clearly the people I was talking with weren't aware of that. And so being curious and doing research and leveraging critical thinking and looking for outlier data is what allowed me to continue working my way through this problem until I figured out, oh, here's how we solve it. Here's how we get the attorneys to give us their blessing. Here's all the technology stuff that needs to happen. Here's the internal systems. We're good to go. It's just a matter of working through, it's a first principles thing, right? Elon Musk talks about first principles. That's basically how I approached it was, I get that you think this is impossible, but I have other data, right? I know otherwise because I've done a bunch of research that other people haven't been doing.
Is that the thing that you believe is repeatable or replicable for others that are learning from this? What's the lesson that people should take away from that?
So there's this idea of the standard narrative and then the non-standard narrative, right? And the standard narrative is what everybody says, right? Here in Silicon Valley, everybody knows that you can't get a job as a software engineer unless you have a computer science degree, right? I've written a lot of code. I don't have a computer science degree. I taught myself how to write code. I was at a startup. I started writing code voluntarily for the software team. And then I kept writing code. And the next company I went to, they hired me because of the skills that I had learned working for free for this startup to be their technology lead and to build their startup, right? I still didn't have a computer science degree. I know a bunch of software engineers here in the Valley. They don't have computer science degrees. Some of the best software engineers that I know never went to college. And so I look for those kind of outliers, those kind of outlier perspectives and the outlier data rather than just listening to the noise of the crowd. And that's really, I find all kinds of magic.
So I hear some things out of you. I hear kind of this like word can't is not in your vocabulary. This there's a way. Like, I mean, the fact that you interview so many people that say, you can't, and you're like, no. I hear this fight for like to win. Like, I want to make sure that we all win, but I hear this abstract thinking, this abstract approach to things. Earlier we were talking about the systems thing, and you had something interesting that you said to me before we started hit record. That was really interesting about you not believing that you were a systemized person before. You kind of shot from the hip. You kind of just like, so I know people like that, people that are very kind of, we'll go with the flow, goalpost move. So what? We'll just kind of take it as it comes and we'll just roll with the punches. So talk about that
Sure.
self-realization and how that plays into what you think you're doing now.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, I used to think I was very much shoot from the hip and just kind of reflex and not systematized. And then a conversation catalyzed me thinking differently because it pointed out where I was actually using systems, even though I didn't think I was. And so then I started looking at it and thinking about it very differently, and finding, it's kind of like this light bulb moment, right? I was like, oh, wait a minute, this is a system, and this is a system, and this is a system, and all these things that I do in life are systematized. Like I have a system for going to the gym. I have a system for how I make coffee in the morning. I have a system for how I tie my shoes, right? I have a system for driving and for, like literally everything. I have a system for how I learn new things. And I was able to look back and go, oh, wait a minute. Everything I did was in alignment with how the system stuff works in my head, and the system for how I learn things, right? I tend to learn things in baby steps. I go from, I don't know how to do it, to what's the most small, tiny thing I can learn that's in the context. And then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And I just build on that. I'm a big fan of Kaizen, this idea of get 1% better every day, which seems on a day-to-day basis like you're not doing anything at all until you look back over time and you go, oh, holy crap, that's crazy. And so now I realize that everything I do as a system, even though sometimes I've abstracted those systems to be able to have them work across what might not look to other people like the same kind of context.
I love that. And I hear that. Like when you're describing this, that's what kind of led me to that question, is this abstract way of approaching a problem.
Right.
That you don't look at it as the same kind of, well, what does the manual say about how to solve this problem? You're a little bit outside the box when it comes to thinking about solving specific problems. And that's a superpower, man. I mean, that's a real gift. And not everybody has that, right? It's can be somewhat unique, and which lends itself to say, hey, we don't have this in our organization. Maybe we, ask Bill about this and bring him in to help us with something like this. If we do have it inside our organization, how do we foster that? How do we bring that out of our people? There's going to be some people that don't think, like their brain just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Some people, it's there, it just needs to be fostered. Yeah. How do we foster this idea of outside the box thinking and outside the box problem solving?
So it's a great question. And usually the place where you have the best impact with that in a company is not the C-suite, but it's the first level team leads. And this was an insight that I got from one of my early startup CEOs, that on a day-to-day basis, the people that have the most impact in a company are actually the individual contributors, because they're making the sales calls and they're writing the code and they're putting out the marketing content, right? Or they're answering customer support calls. And that the biggest impact on the individual contributors is their team leads. And so when you can train the team leads to build an environment of very, very high psychological safety, people can be vulnerable, and they can say, everybody's saying we can't do this, but I think we can. Right. And it's scary in a team meeting if you're not used to doing that. And so as the team lead, we have to be able to build an environment where everybody knows that no matter how crazy the thing is they say, that they're not going to be criticized. That and even if it turns out that it's a bad idea, most likely we're going to riff on it and credit them with having the initial catalyst that got us to this other thing that works really, really well. Mm-hmm. Because it's a team, productivity at work is a team sport. It's just like football. Like the only reason Tom Brady is, like people know his name is he was able to get everybody else on the team to play really, really well. Like that's one of those, people don't talk about this enough, about his leadership skills, but he got everybody else on the team to play really, really well. Otherwise, we wouldn't talk about him as being a decent quarterback, right? And when he went to a new team, he did it again, right? He proved he was able to get that team to be in alignment and all play together, right? And that's the game, right? That's what it's all about, right? So if you're a team lead, or if you run team leads, getting them to be understanding and doing the behaviors, which might be emotionally uncomfortable a little bit because it's a brand new thing to do and they've got to learn some new stuff and they have to understand how to baby step into it, right? You're not going to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. You've got to build up, again, back to the whole Kaizen thing. You build into it gradually, and because you can't just tell your team, hey, we're all safe, you can say whatever you want to, because they don't trust you, right? They don't trust the environment, and they're going to be like, yeah, no. And so you have to be able to iterate and build on that.
Very cool. What is I got a couple little questions for you that are kind of, so what is a podcast or a book everybody should be checking out right now that you think would be valuable to maybe some of the context of things you're talking about?
I think I'm listening to Alex Hormozy a lot because he does a really good job of, number one, explaining different kinds of mental models that he's used through his entrepreneurial journey, and even before then. And he's good about, this is a skill you're going to have to practice and work on, and that it takes a lot of reps. Yeah, I think he and his wife are pretty good about that. And I think that's a good starting point for people, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, just the exposure to different ways of thinking about things. And Alex and his wife are pretty successful. So I think that's it's a good example, right? And Alex is pretty good about talking about the emotional side of working through stuff and how he's done it, right? And he doesn't have a really atomic breakdown of his skill set, but he makes it clear that he's had emotional challenges through the process and that he's been able to handle it, and that's why he's successful. God, I don't really have a number 2 right now.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
No, just one.
Just one. Yeah.
One at a time. One at a time. We can only digest so many podcasts at a time, right? So
yeah.
Okay. Here's something that I don't really talk to anybody else about, but you're so set on this, like, learning skills and just these little things. Even before we talked, is just learning how to grade land, how to do something like that. What's a skill set that you think everybody should learn? Something that you've learned where you're like, oh yeah, this has been super helpful. Like, I think everybody should learn how to do this, even just a little bit over time.
Yeah. So it might not be obvious, but I spent decades with social anxiety. I was a very shy introvert. And I realized at one point that, number one, it was impacting my career, and number two, it was going to impact my parenting. That I didn't want my fear of talking with strangers to impact how my kids saw the world. And so I said, okay, I got to get over this. Like, I've got to figure out a way to not be afraid of talking to people anymore. I really need to work on this. And so a friend helped me get started talking with strangers. And the starting point was going into Starbucks and asking the barista how their day was going after I'd ordered a drink. And that was scary when I started doing it. If you can learn to talk to strangers and work your way up the stack, then it becomes very easy to talk with people on your teams, executives at your company. You can pitch the CEO, right? You can build. So now I like public speaking, right? So I went from being afraid of talking to strangers to now I love being in front of a room of strangers. And I talk to strangers all the time. But this is one of those this is one of those skills that's a gateway skill because it opens all kinds of other doors. Like one of the things as a team lead that I do, one of the mental models is you got to be curious as a team lead. You have to go talk to strangers and bring knowledge back to your team. You got to be a scout for the team, right? If you can't talk to strangers, then you can't do that really critically important part of your job. And so learning how to talk to strangers has made it easy to do job interviews. It's made it easy to interview like everybody, right? It's made it easy to be on podcasts, right?
Well,
yeah.
You've done a great job today, Bill. Like your ability to talk to me, and yeah, we don't know each other, so it was you did fantastic, man. So all that barista small talk has led you to where you are today.
Yeah, and I still go every time I go to Starbucks. I ask them how their day's going. Like it's practice, right? You have to do it. Cool. It's like talking about the daily or the weekly habits, right? I still do all those things. Yeah.
Do the reps, man. Put in the reps. That's so cool. All right. People want to talk to you. They want to bring you in. They want to understand a little bit about how you do this because you have a full program that you can bring to companies and introduce them to this, train them on it so that they can then implement it inside their own organizations. What do they do?
So the easiest thing is you can email me. It's just hello@40pb.com, number 40, and then P for percent, B for better. I got lucky and got a very short domain name.
That's awesome. Good play.
Yeah, hello@40pb.com or bill@40pb.com. They both end up coming to me. And we can set up a phone call, talk about what's going on for you. And whether you want me to come in and just do a workshop, something short and help people start to think about this, or if you want to do a full blown or, what it is you want to do. Yeah.
And I noticed just checking out your TikTok and your YouTube channels, and you put a lot of content out, man. And it's really good. Like,
oh, thank you.
And it's bite-sized, like 2-3 minute, like, hey, this is how you work on communication. This is how you work on promotion. This is how you you put some good stuff out, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You. Yeah. So, well done. People want to connect with you there. So find you on LinkedIn, find you on YouTube, find you on TikTok. And go to those places. But I really appreciate you being here, Bill.
Thank you.
You've added some real value to the people here, and I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, this is fun. You make it very easy.
Well, I try. I'm glad because now that I know about your social anxiety, I've been like, oh my gosh, if I was a big jerk in this interview, that would have been really tough for you. So
no, it's there's so many reps, and I've been doing this and building this skill in little tiny pieces for so long. I've had some, I'm trying to be diplomatic. I've worked with executives who were very poor communicators. Let's just leave it at that. And it just doesn't faze me anymore. I'm like, oh, I get it. You're not comfortable in this context, right? One of the reasons I'm such a proponent of learning how to manage your own emotions is that along the way, that self-awareness helps us go see when other people are really uncomfortable and when their communication gets sideways because frankly, they're afraid. Like that's the net of it is the fear is making them be a bad communicator because they don't know how in a scary moment to communicate effectively. Right. And so when you learn how to manage your own emotions, you're able to have some empathy for people when they're emotionally really uncomfortable and their communication goes sideways. You'd be like, oh, I get it. We just stepped into a place that for you just is really, really scary. Let me figure out how to back up. Let me figure out how to approach this in a different way. And then we can continue the conversation. And maybe it's, we come back tomorrow, right? And go from there. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I mean, and that ability, because you came from that space to be able to see that is really cool too. So,
thank you.
Well done, man. Well done. Well, have a beautiful day. It's good seeing you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. This has been fun.
Achieving impossible results. How do we do that? Well, Bill believes we do it through systems. Number one, mental models. Number two, the skill sets to perform those mental models. And number three, the habits, practicing those skill sets that reinforce the mental models over and over and over again so we get better at them. Even to the idea of like 1% better. Maybe we think we're not getting as good as we should be, but if we look back over the time, staying consistent, you go, maybe I did get a little bit of muscle by going to the gym every day for 20 minutes. That makes an impact. Just the tiny bits of consistency is what makes the impact. How do we level up our team? How do we have a mindset of being emotionally uncomfortable? Are we okay with that? Being emotionally uncomfortable? Well, Bill thinks we need to be. And if we're not, then we really need to think about why, and we need to kind of process that a little bit more too. The vulnerability piece, I think, is really important. Are we creating cultures of psychological safety where people feel comfortable bringing these ideas, these out of the box ideas, to where we're not going to say, your out of the box ideas are crazy. I don't know where that's going to happen. I don't know how we're going to make that happen. I don't know where you even come with this. Like, people aren't going to want to share. There are naturally people that are out of the box that we really need that thinking, because that is what builds the idea of innovation, progress, and improvement in everything we're trying to do. So give those people a space, foster that inside your organization. That is how we solve problems. Thank you, Bill, for being on the show. If you want to find out more information about me or check out the show notes where there's going to be more information and links to the things referenced in this episode, visit skotwaldron.com. And lastly, I'm asking for a little bit of love, just a little bit. So please take a moment, follow, rate the show. The algorithms like that. It helps me get the word out. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And until next time, stay unlocked.